All right, so it is Thursday, and we're going to learn a Rashi from the fifth Aliyah. We continue with the brachos that Yaakov is dispensing to his children, and every one of these brachos that Yaakov gives to the tribes is somewhat prophetic in nature, foreshadowing something about the role that tribe is going to play in the future of the Jewish people, prophesizing something about the territory of land that they're going to eventually have in the land of Israel. So even though prophecy was taken away to some degree from Yaakov in this parsha, he was supposed to tell his children, was supposed to tell them what's going to happen in the end of days. He's not able to do that. He's not successful at really transmitting to them the story of Jewish history going forward into the future. But through the brachos that he gives, he's both blessing them, he's telling them a little bit about themselves in terms of their past, but he's also foreshadowing certain pieces of their future. And so our aliyah today, the fifth aliyah, starts with the bracha for God, and then Asher, Naphtali, Yosef. I wanted to point out one thing from the bracha of Asher, which is interesting. And I wanted to choose either Asher or Yosef because our son Joseph is Yosef Asher. So we got two tribes in this aliyah. It's a very short aliyah, but we got two of the tribes in this aliyah in our family. And so I wanted to say something about Asher. Interesting pasuk. The bracha to Asher is Me'asher Shmeina Lachmo V'hu Yitain Ma'adanei Melech. From Asher, meaning not from the person Asher, not even from the tribe of Asher, but really from the territory of Asher as it would be in the future land of Israel, Shmeina Lachmo. Fat is its bread, or his bread. V'hu yitain ma'adanei melech. And he will provide the treats, the savory treats for a king, for kings. So it's talking about something about the produce of the land of Asher. And Rashi here tells us what it is. The very first thing he says, Me'asher shmeina lachmo, ma'achal haba mechalko shel Asher, yeh shamein. So number one thing he does, and this is not surprising if you learn Rashi, many Rashis all over Chumash, probably Shas, to this effect as well. When it says lachmo, mean from the word lechem, his lechem doesn't mean bread. Lechem is just a way of referring generally to food. So number one thing Rashi is pointing out is that the food from the territory of Asher is going to be shamein. It's going to be fat. It's going to be rich. It's going to be multi-layered. It's going to be plentiful in some way. So he did two things for us. You could easily miss this in Rashi because we take it so for granted. So number one, he says that lechem is ma'achal. Lechem is not necessarily bread in the narrow sense, but food in the broad sense. And me'asher is not from Asher, but haba mechalko, from the territory of Asher. So those two chidushim, Rashi tells us right off the bat. Then he explains, what does it mean? What does it mean that there's going to be some kind of plentiful or fatty food that comes from his territory? Shehayu zeitim merubim bechalko. What it's specifically referring to is the abundance of olives, beautiful, wonderful olives that will grow in his portion. Vehu moshech shemen kema'ayan. There's so many olive groves in the territory of Asher that it'll be like the oil is overflowing like a mayan, like a spring that just continues to give more and more oil. And so Shemeina is now a double kind of play on the word. It means fat, it means plentiful, but it's also a reference to shemen. It's from the same root, shamein and shemen, obviously for good reason, which is because oil is, a certain type of fat. When you cook, you can cook with butter, you can cook with whatever other grease, you can cook with oil. So oil is a certain kind of fat. So shmeina is a play on the word over here. Me'asher shmeina lachmo. From Asher, his ma'achal, his food will be shamein, plentiful, or his food will be shemen. It will be the oil that comes from the olives. Now, how does Rashi know that? So brilliantly, and this is why I chose this Rashi to teach today, is because of the next piece. V'chein bercho Moshe. How do we know it's olives? Because this is exactly the bracha that Moshe gives when he blesses the tribes. So there's a lot of work to do in comparing the brachos of Yaakov and Vayechi to the brachos of Moshe and Bezos HaBracha at the end of the Torah. They each bless the tribes, and it's interesting to compare and contrast them. So in this case, Rashi is comparing them. And he's saying the bracha of Asher here and the bracha of Asher at the end of the Torah with Moshe Rabbeinu are similar, and we can fill in the details from one to the next. So in our Rashi, we learn that there's some kind of plentiful food that's going to emerge from the territory of Asher. We have a hint here that maybe it's oil from the olives because of the word shemena related to shemen. However, we get this confirmed by the added details that are brought in Vizos HaBracha about the bracha of Asher, because Moshe says, V'tovel bashemen raglo, that his feet, meaning the feet of the descendants of Asher who will live in that territory, will be kind of swimming, so to speak, in oil or dipped in oil. There'll be so much oil, it's as if their feet are just kind of dipping in it, swimming in it, walking in it. It'll be everywhere. It's so ubiquitous. So we know from the specific bracha of Moshe to Asher that oil will be plentiful in their tribe. So now we bring that back over here and implant that in our pasuk, saying the reference here to Shmeina Lachmo, to the abundance of food that will come from his territory. It must be olives, which give this wonderful olive oil. So that's number one reason I picked this. First, to show you that even just in a very simple statement, Rashi gives two chidushim here about Asher and Lachmo. Secondly, that Rashi gives an inference about our pasuk, both from the word Shmena, but also correlating these brachos to Vizos HaBracha. And now the third reason why I chose this Rashi is because he cites at the end a Gemara. He says, Kmo sheshaninu bemenachos. The Gemara Menachos tells the story, Pam achas nitztarchu anshe ludkia l'shemen. He connects this to a story in the Gemara Menachos. It's a longer story, but essentially, there's a place called Ludkia, faraway land, and they're in need of olive oil. And they send an emissary, non-Jewish emissary, all the way to the land of Israel. And he goes to Jerusalem, and they say, can we find some olive oil here? They say, no, you better go to Tyre, to Tzor. They go up to Tzor. They say, no, you're not going to find it here. Go to Gush Chalab, which is in the territory of Asher. So he goes to Gush Chalab. They say, go to this specific city. And they go to this specific city, and he finds the prime farmer, the prime harvester guy in his field. And he goes to him and says, I need 100, gallons, whatever exaggerated amount of olive oil I need. And he sees the guy is working in his field. He's clearing stones. He's digging holes. And he thinks, oh, who did they send me to? I'm an emissary of this major power, this major king in Ludkia, this community in Ludkia. I've come all this way to meet the prime Jewish olive press guy in Israel. They send me all the way here. And it's like some menial worker in the field. Are the Jews playing a trick on me, a joke on me? And then the guy says, no, come with me. And they go to the guy's house, and he gives him tons and tons of oil, more than he even expected. And he actually goes along with him for the journey back to Ludkia to sell more of the oil. It's a beautiful story. There are many angles to the story that we could talk about. But what I wanted to point out here, not only does Rashi now confirm what we're learning here based on future evidence, that the Gemara cites that in the territory of Asher, they did have great olives and olive oil, and it was known for that. So it's a Gemara that confirms everything Rashi said here, but there's another detail of it that I wanted to point to. And that is, we see that the Gemara's prime example of olive oil coming from the territory of Asher, something that is shamein, that is plentiful, that is rich, that is fatty, right, comes from a person who shows tremendous humility. The prime olive press guy, the prime olive farmer, acts like a menial worker in the field, so much so that the emissary from Ludkia can't even recognize him. Maybe what Rashi is hinting to by citing this Gemara is that the bracha of the territory of Asher, of plentiful, beautiful olives and oil that flows and goes to kings, maybe comes because of humility. It may come to be shamein, very fat and rich and plentiful, but that richness only comes from people who are humble enough to recognize where it comes from, and that the bracha is really from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And so maybe that's a nice lesson that Rashi leaves us here, aside from just explaining the pasuk. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Rabbi.